Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop overthinking a relationship, the moment you finally stop texting first, the moment you start living your life again, he suddenly starts chasing? It's not magic. It's not a trick. It's energy. See, when you care less, not because you're playing games, but because you've recentered yourself, you create a shift. You're no longer seeking validation. You're not leaning in, trying to earn someone's love. You're standing tall, owning your worth. And that energy is intoxicating. Because let's be real, confidence is quiet, desperation is loud. When you're always available, always saying yes, always chasing, you become predictable. And predictability, in the early stages of attraction, kills the spark. But when you pull back, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, you create space. And in that space, something powerful happens. He starts to wonder, where did she go? What's she doing? Why isn't she texting me like she used to? And now he's thinking about you. But here's the catch. This only works when it's genuine. You can't fake detachment while secretly checking your phone every 3 minutes. You have to mean it. You have to actually choose you. You have to actually get busy with your life, your passions, your friends, your glow up. That's when your energy says, I'm whole with or without you. And that is when you become magnetic. Because high-value people aren't desperate to be chosen. They choose themselves. And from that place, attract what aligns. So if you're tired of chasing, if you're tired of wondering where you stand, if you're tired of giving more than you get, try this. Pull back, recenter, focus on you, and watch what happens. The less you care, the more he chases. Let's talk about something that might sound counterintuitive at first. This idea that the less you care, the more he chases. Now, I don't mean pretending not to care. I'm not talking about putting on a mask, playing cold, or ghosting someone for attention. That's not what this is about. What I'm talking about is detachment, emotional independence, that calm inner certainty that says, I'm okay no matter what happens here. That energy is powerful, and it's attractive. Think about it. When someone is overly invested too early, before there's even a foundation, it's not love. It's anxiety, dressed up as affection. And what do most people do when they feel that intense clinginess from someone they barely know? They pull back. Not because they don't like attention, but because it feels heavy. It feels rushed. It feels like pressure. And what happens when the energy shifts? When you're no longer overanalyzing every message, every pause in the conversation, every emoji or lack of one. When you stop asking yourself, did I say too much? Or why hasn't he replied yet? When you stop making your day revolve around whether or not he's showing up, suddenly, something changes. Not just in how he sees you, but in how you see yourself. That's the shift. That's detachment. It's not that you don't care, you do care. You're just not attached to the outcome. You're not handing someone the keys to your mood. You're not letting their attention or absence determine your self-worth. You stop needing them to validate you. And that space you reclaim, that becomes attractive, because people feel it. They can sense when your attention is earned, not given blindly. They sense when you're engaging with them out of choice, not because you're desperate to fill a void. And let me tell you, there's nothing more magnetic than someone who's already whole. Now, I know some people hear that and think, so I'm just supposed to not care. That's not it either. You're allowed to care. You're allowed to be interested. But when your happiness hinges on someone else's response, it's no longer interest, it's dependency. It's giving someone a level of control they haven't earned yet. Let's flip the perspective for a second. Think of the most confident person you know, someone who knows their value, who walks into a room like they belong there. Are they chasing anyone's attention? Are they bending over backward to prove themselves to someone who hasn't even shown consistent effort? No, they show up fully as themselves, and the right people gravitate toward them. You don't need to convince the right person to like you. And when you believe that, truly believe it, You start to care a little less about being liked and more about being respected. You stop asking, how can I make him choose me, and start asking, does this situation reflect the standard I've set for myself? That's where the power lies. Detachment is not coldness, it's warmth paired with boundaries. It's presence without pressure. It's saying, I'm here because I want to be, not because I need to be. That's what changes the game. That's when the chase begins, not because you're being elusive, but because your energy says, I'm not trying to hold you here, you're free to go. But if you stay, it better be with intention. And that's when he starts leaning in. That's when he starts texting you first. That's when he starts wondering what you think about him for a change. Because the moment you stop trying to convince someone to want you, you create the space for them to genuinely choose you, or not. And either way, you win. You either get pursued by someone who's aligned with your energy, or you create room for someone better to enter. So don't confuse caring less with playing games. This isn't about manipulation, this is about returning to yourself. It's about stepping out of the chaos of emotional overinvestment and stepping into your peace. It's about showing up in the world like someone who's already whole. And from that place, trust me, he'll feel it, he'll sense it. And if he's the right kind of man, he'll chase it. Because the less you care, the more he chases. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like the moment you stopped trying so hard to explain yourself, to be overly available, or to give someone your entire life story up front, suddenly they're more intrigued? That's not an accident. That's the power of mystery. That's what happens when you stop giving everything away in the first few moments, and instead let things unfold naturally. We live in a world that teaches us to overshare, tell him everything, be open, be vulnerable. Yes, vulnerability has its place, but not at the cost of curiosity. When someone feels like they've already figured you out after 2 dates or a few conversations, what's left to discover? What's left to lean into? Attraction isn't just about connection, it's also about tension. It's about pacing. It's about leaving space for someone to lean forward and wonder, who is this person really? Now, I'm not talking about playing games or being deliberately vague. This isn't about pretending to be mysterious. That's just a different kind of performance. What I'm talking about is giving people the gift of getting to know you over time, letting the layers peel back slowly, not all at once. That's what builds intrigue. That's what keeps someone thinking about you when you're not around. Because if you give everything away too soon, what motivation do they have to stay curious? Let's be honest, part of what makes something or someone exciting is the unknown. When you're reading a great book, you don't want the last chapter handed to you on page 2. You want to turn the pages. You want to discover what happens next. Attraction works the same way. If you lay your entire emotional life on the table before someone's even earned that intimacy, they're no longer discovering you, they're digesting you, and it's too much too soon. Think about how different it feels when someone is present, warm, confident, but doesn't feel the need to over-explain themselves. They don't anxiously fill every silence. They don't need you to approve of every part of them right away. Instead, they're simply there, enjoying the moment, letting things unfold. That kind of energy, that's magnetic, because it says, I'm secure in who I am, and you don't need to know everything about me today for this to be meaningful. And let's take it even further. When you keep a sense of independence, when your world doesn't revolve around whether someone texts you back, when you've got passions, plans, people in your life that light you up, that alone creates mystery. Not because you're hiding anything, but because you're not waiting for someone to complete your story. You're living it already. And that makes someone want to join your story, not be your whole world. You're not being elusive to get a reaction. You're simply living with depth. And that depth isn't revealed all at once. It's shared through real moments. A story here, a glance there, a joke with meaning. And that slow reveal, that's where the connection deepens. That's where someone becomes hooked. Not just on your looks or your voice, but on the feeling they get when they're around you. And it's funny when you stop trying to be mysterious, and instead just focus on showing up fully in your life. The mystery takes care of itself. Why? Because you're no longer on standby, waiting for someone to validate you. You're already in motion. You're not the one doing the chasing. You're the one creating something so powerful within yourself that others feel that energy, and it draws them in. And when they do lean in, when they do start to ask more questions, that's your moment to build the connection slowly, intentionally. You're not withholding, you're just pacing. You're not building a wall, you're building a standard. You're inviting someone to earn more of you, to earn your story, to earn your trust. And trust me, people value what they have to invest in. People chase what they feel they're still discovering. So if you feel like you've been too available, too transparent, too open book, too soon, and it's been getting you nowhere, try this pull back just enough to let the silence breathe. Let the moment speak. Let him fill in the space. You don't have to be mysterious to everyone, but you don't have to hand your soul over to someone who hasn't earned it, either. The less you care, the more he chases. There's this moment in dating where you realize you've been putting in all the effort, messaging first, adjusting your schedule, trying to keep the conversation alive, and deep down, you start to feel a little off balance, like you're doing more than you should, more than they are, and yet you're getting less in return. That's the moment to pay attention. That's when self-respect becomes the filter you didn't know you needed. See, when you stop trying so hard, something powerful happens. You start attracting based on who you are, not how much you're willing to overextend yourself for someone else's attention. And the truth is, the right person doesn't need to be chased. The right person steps up. The right person meets you halfway, or more. But when you're the one constantly filling in the gaps, constantly over-delivering, while they do the bare minimum, what you're really doing is training them. You're saying, this is the level of effort I'll accept from you, and people will always meet you at the standard you allow. I'm not saying you should never initiate, or never care. Of course not. You should be warm, you should be present, but the moment you find yourself in a dynamic where your energy is being drained instead of mirrored, that's the red flag. That's your cue to pause, to ask, what am I doing this for? Am I trying to earn something I shouldn't have to beg for? Because when you come from a place of self-respect, you don't chase, you don't over-explain, you don't compromise your time, your dignity, or your standards just to keep someone mildly interested. You observe, you stay grounded. And if the energy isn't being matched, you adjust, not by talking about it endlessly, but by stepping back, by letting your silence say what your words no longer need to. When you stop trying too hard, you naturally repel the people who are only there for convenience. And that's a good thing. You're no longer bending to keep someone who was never really showing up in the first place. And at the same time, you become a magnet for people who see your value, who recognize the effort you do give, and who rise to meet it. And let's be honest, there's something incredibly attractive about someone who knows how to give, but also knows when to stop giving. That's strength. That's self-worth. That's what makes people take you seriously. When you no longer hand out unlimited access to someone who's giving you breadcrumbs, they start to realize, this isn't someone who can be strung along. This is someone who has options. Someone with a full life. Someone who doesn't need attention. They choose it. You don't need to play hard to get. You just need to be hard to disrespect. Let me tell you something that's hard to hear. If someone isn't showing up for you, they're making a choice. Not being ready is a choice. Being inconsistent is a choice. And every time you try to explain their behavior away, or compensate for it by doing more, you're making a choice, too. You're choosing to stay in a space where you're not being seen the way you deserve. But when you shift, when you stop chasing and start observing, you change the energy. You start attracting people who are emotionally available, who respect your time, who don't need convincing to treat you right. Why? Because you're no longer operating from a place of lack. You're operating from a place of alignment. That's why the moment you stop trying too hard, the dynamics change. That's when people start to chase you, because they're no longer responding to someone who's proving themselves. They're responding to someone who's standing in their power. Someone who's not afraid to walk away from energy that feels imbalanced. Someone who would rather be alone than be with someone who doesn't value them properly. And you know what? That's the kind of person people remember. That's the kind of presence that lingers in someone's mind long after the conversation ends. Not because you said all the right things, but because you didn't need anything from them. You were whole without their attention. That energy, that's unforgettable. So if you've been the one giving too much, chasing too hard, bending your world around someone who isn't bending even slightly, pause. Reclaim your self-respect. Let the silence do the work. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone who can't already see it. The less you care, the more he chases. We've all been there. Something happens. A message doesn't come through when you expected it. They take a little longer to reply. Maybe they seem off during a conversation, and immediately your mind starts racing. What does it mean? Are they pulling away? Did I do something wrong? Should I say something? Should I back off? Or maybe reach out again, just to make sure they're still interested. That's the emotional spiral, and it's completely normal. But here's the thing, that emotional spiral kills attraction. Not because you're wrong for feeling those things, but because the energy you move from, when you let your emotions drive your next move, is often anxious, reactive, and ungrounded. And that kind of energy pushes people away, even when your intention is to bring them closer. Emotional control doesn't mean you never feel. It doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It means you learn how to respond instead of react. It means you know how to take a breath, come back to center, and make a decision from your power, not your panic. And that kind of composure, that's magnetic. That's the energy people want to be around, not because it's fake, but because it's rare. In dating, we often think that showing we care means showing everything, all our feelings, our fears, our insecurities, our doubts. But when that's not earned, when you're giving that emotional weight to someone who hasn't proven they can carry it, it comes off as intensity, not intimacy. You're giving them a job they didn't sign up for yet, and instead of pulling them in, it makes them step back. Now contrast that with someone who is calm, someone who can feel the discomfort of a moment, maybe a delay in communication or a shift in energy, but doesn't rush to fix it. They don't send the just checking in text 5 minutes after being left on read. They don't let their emotions dictate their actions. They sit with the feeling. They remind themselves who they are, and they allow the situation to unfold without grabbing at it. That emotional stillness, that groundedness, that's powerful, because it sends a message: I'm not here trying to control this. I'm here observing, I'm choosing, and if this doesn't work, I'll be okay. And when you carry that kind of emotional poise, people feel it. It shifts the dynamic. They start wondering what you think, where you stand, how you feel, because they sense you're not operating from a place of need. People chase what feels grounded, what feels calm, what feels selective. And when you're in control of your emotional state, when you don't flinch at every delay or distance, you project a kind of quiet confidence that speaks louder than any grand romantic gesture ever could. It's not about silence or suppression either. Emotional control isn't about bottling everything up. It's about timing and delivery. It's knowing when it's the right moment to express something. It's having the awareness to say, this is how I feel, and I'm okay with it, but I'm not going to let it control me. That's maturity. That's strength. That's what makes someone want to stay close. Because let's face it, no one wants to feel like they're walking on eggshells around someone else's emotional storms. And when you have the ability to self-regulate, to hold space for your own feelings without offloading them prematurely, it makes you emotionally safe. And emotional safety, that's one of the most attractive traits you can bring into any connection. And you'll notice something else. When you start owning your emotional space, when you stop reacting and start observing, your standards naturally rise. You're no longer trying to make every situation work. You're not chasing clarity from someone who's inconsistent. You're letting the situation reveal itself. You're letting them show you who they are. And from there you get to decide what deserves your energy. It's a shift from chasing to choosing. So the next time you feel that urge to react, to send the long text, to explain your worth, to fix the silence, pause. Ask yourself, what does this moment actually need from me? Not from fear, not from insecurity, but from strength. from clarity, from peace. Because that calm response, that quiet confidence, that's what creates tension. That's what builds attraction. That's what makes someone think, she's different. She's not shaken easily. She knows who she is. And that's exactly the kind of energy people chase. The less you care, the more he chases. We spend so much time wondering, why isn't he showing up? Why isn't he committing? Why do I feel like I'm always waiting for something that never fully arrives? But very few people stop to ask the more important question: what energy am I giving off right now? Because whether we realize it or not, we're always teaching people how to treat us, through what we allow, what we tolerate, and what we prioritize in ourselves. You don't have to say, I'm desperate for someone to feel it. You don't have to say, I'll wait forever for someone to take their time. They feel it. They sense it in your tone, your texts, your willingness to bend, and how quickly you abandon your own standards. The second someone gives you a little attention, people respond to the energy you carry. If you're living in a space where your sense of worth is dependent on someone else's response, you hand them all the power. You walk into the dynamic already one step behind, already seeking something instead of offering something, and you become reactive instead of intentional. And when you're reactive, you're easy to control, easy to manipulate, and worst of all, easy to forget. But when your energy is rooted in confidence, when it says, I know who I am, I know what I bring, and I'm not afraid to walk away if this isn't right, that's when people take notice. That's when the game changes. Because you're no longer showing up to be chosen, you're showing up to choose. And that's powerful. People chase what they sense is scarce, not unavailable, not closed off, but rare. And that kind of energy comes from someone who is full within themselves, someone who has a life, a rhythm, a purpose, that isn't waiting on a text thread to come alive. You become someone they have to earn, someone they have to impress, because you're not sitting around hoping to be noticed. You're out there living in a way that demands attention. You see, it's not about pretending not to care. That's just a mask. People can smell pretense. It's about truly caring more about yourself than about someone who hasn't yet earned your emotional investment. You care about your energy, your peace, your time. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not indifferent, you're aware. And you're not bitter, you're intentional. That energy, that's what people chase. Because most people are used to being chased. They're used to having someone constantly adjust, constantly try harder, constantly prove themselves. When you don't do that, when you stand still, grounded, confident, it makes them lean in. It makes them wonder why you're not chasing, why you're not trying so hard. And that curiosity becomes attraction. But let's go deeper. This isn't just about dating. This is about how you move through life. Your energy is what walks into the room before you say a word. It's in how you hold eye contact, how you speak your boundaries, how you're not afraid of silence or walking away. It's in your ability to let go of things that no longer serve you, not because you're heartless, but because you value yourself too much to stay where you're not being fed. If you want people to take you seriously, start taking yourself seriously. Don't just say you have standards, live like you do. Don't just talk about self-worth, act like someone who knows their worth. That means being okay with missing out on people who don't show up right. That means being comfortable with being misunderstood, if it protects your peace. That means being consistent in how you treat yourself, even if it means losing someone else in the process. Because at the end of the day, you set the tone, you define the value, you dictate what kind of behavior is acceptable in your life. And if someone isn't matching your energy, stop lowering yours. Hold your frequency. The ones who are meant for you will rise to meet you there. They'll feel your energy and respond, not with confusion or distance, but with effort, with clarity, with pursuit. And the best part, when they do come closer, they'll be doing it not because you begged, not because you chased, but because you became the kind of person whose presence naturally attracts the right attention. You don't have to perform, you don't have to please, you just become. And that's what makes someone chase, not because they're afraid to lose you, but because they genuinely want to keep up with you. The less you care, the more he chases.